Good day, gentlemen. Hope you all have a good day today. Today we're going to talk about two types of people in the world there are, and that would be asset producers and influence peddlers. Now, asset producers are pretty much a dominance trait when it comes to reproduction, and influence peddlers are pretty much a hypergamous trait. The reason for that is asset producers are the ones who go out and get stuff, provide it, and bring it back and give it to somebody to distribute. The people they give it to distribute to are pretty much influence peddlers. They don't actually produce much of anything, but they usually have a good deal to do with how they're distributed. Now, when you look at the advantages and disadvantages of these guys, you'll find that asset producers are usually pretty spread out. Their communications are a bit dysfunctional. They've got to be going out doing a lot of things, and that generally means that they're spread out. Whereas the influence peddlers are usually all in one spot. Everything's brought to them, and they just decide where it's going after that. Their asset producers provide real things, and the influence peddlers, they just find solutions to controlling the thing, basically. Now, they are by necessity dispersed, the asset producers are, and the influence peddlers, all they've got to do is control the point of provision. They got direct provisions to an end-use point. Now, there are some times when asset production and all that sort of thing is pretty complex and pretty heavy. And by their very nature, the asset producers have to realize that a lot of things are finite. And they've got to take a look at objective reality, what's out there, how much there is or isn't, and how much they can get and how much they can't, and how to do that. Whereas the influence peddlers don't really have to do much of anything except receive it and distribute it. That's pretty much the way it is, and it's been that way. It's families, communities, nations, cultures, even up to civilizations. They work that way. Somebody's got to make it, and somebody's got to put it out there and get it to someone who can use it, or who will use it. That's just the way it works. Now, when the asset producers start bringing it in and so on and so forth, they generally speaking have some authority over that. But there's a balance in there. There has to be a balance in authority between the ones who distribute it and the ones who produce it. The reason for that being, if one gets too powerful, well, if you're out there producing stuff constantly and you're responsible and accountable for that production and you have to bring it back all the time, but you have no authority, that's historically been called slavery. But if you bring it in there, you've got some authority over it and all of that sort of thing, you get some respect and some help from the influence peddlers. You can plan things in such a way that, well, nobody's really enslaved or oppressed or anything of that nature. That's been one of the common problems throughout history, like I said, in families and communities, nations, cultures, and civilizations. There's always somebody who wants to get control of all that and oppress somebody to do it. And it just comes natural. You can't really blame the hypergamous ones because that's pretty much a female trait. They kind of fell into that role naturally because they were at home most of the time trying to raise kids. They were disabled. They couldn't really get out and do all of that stuff. Somebody had to do it for them. So the ones who survived and kept on going and so on and so forth were the men willing to do that, and the women who know how to get them to do that. So they both learned some real good lessons. Men learned how to get it. Women learned how to get them to do it. And men wanted to do it, of course. You have to want to do something like that. You don't just go out and get a whole bunch of stuff and give it to somebody for their use unless you care about it. And that also has to do with possession and authority, accountability, responsibility. There's kind of a mix there you might want to think about a little bit.